supporters of Dave's Tackle Box.
Hello, good evening, welcome again. It's Sunday the 28th of April 2013 and this is Dave's Tackle Box. Now, coming up tonight, we've got a little update from Switzerland. Well, what else was I going to do? And just some thoughts. If you remember, I had this EVOD thing and I took that to Switzerland with me and I learned some things about the EVOD during the week. So we'll be having a little look at that. And I bought like a bunch of like what I've got written down here, assorted vape mail. So I'm going to be going through some little bits and bobs that I've picked up, some for travelling with and just some because they look cool and mostly are. But also I'm going to dedicate a section of this week's show to, again, what I've written down here are things looking up. Is the tide turning? Since January we've been pounding home a message and it's been all doom and gloom and looks like it was all over at times from the EU. Maybe, just maybe, we're making a little bit of headway and turning things around. So we're going to have a look at a couple of little things like that. Got some exciting news on the Kickstarter project as well. We'll get to all of that. We'll start by running the titles. Ah yes, Switzerland. What a place Switzerland is. It's a very strange place. Last week I mentioned the 14 quid McDonald's meal. Just the tip of the iceberg. Such an expensive place. I mean, my advice, visit Switzerland. Don't go and work there. It's the definition of bureaucratic. It's a nightmare. I spent the entire time that I've been home, because I was home on Thursday and Friday, getting copies of birth certificates and pieces of paper. They want proof of things that we don't have things like ID cards or anything in the UK, and they want that kind of information. Oh man. But like I say, you're all right because you can sit there in the UK and other places with relative freedom and watch me record bits of Switzerland for you, so you get the best deal here. I'll run this week's diary and then I'm going to sort of talk about some things that I've done to solve a couple of the issues that crop up in this Swiss Diary Part 2. Roll VT.
You might be able to see a big ugly building behind me. Sort of over there. That's the office. And I'm leaving it because it's time to go home on Tuesday night. And I'm going to go and film some stuff, I think. And veg in the hotel. That's my cunning plan. Got some points to make about the EVOD, so I'll do that in a bit. I'll film anything interesting that I pass on the way.
Right, made it back to the hotel, and by this stage of the day I'm looking forward to having something that's a nicer vape. Now, if you saw my show on Sunday last week, I had a very, very hurried look at this thing, which is the EVOD. This is the 650 milliamp hour battery, and an EVOD cartomizer, whatever you want to call it, on the top. And I said that I'd been using it for a couple of days, sort of Saturday and Sunday, and it was very enjoyable. And I stand by that. I found a couple of little issues with it, which are very, very specific to my travel. So it probably wouldn't be an issue for anybody else. But basically, because this tastes a lot better than what I tend to put in here, which is this is the sort of super stealthy, lose it in the palm of your hand, 45 milligram, bite extra, whack. So it's perfect for on the plane or something when you can't be seen to be blowing out clouds of vapour and stuff like that. But because this tastes so much nicer, I found that I've been using it more than I did the Ego last week with that Mini Nova thing on it. I've been here 2 days, and I think this has been refilled twice, and I've used about half the tank today. So I am using it a little bit more. And what I'm starting to find is the flavour is starting, it's a little bit less pronounced than it was. Now, I have to say, I've got a bit of a cold. You could probably hear it in my voice. So that might be affecting things as well. And it still sort of rates easily as well as one of those big dual coil cartomizers. So I'm not going to get upset about that. The other thing I noticed with it is that they are a bit susceptible to pressurised cabins. I said on Sunday night that it hadn't leaked on me or anything yet. Well, I have to modify that now. It has now leaked on me. That said, it leaked in quite a sort of a well-contained way. It wasn't until I tried using it. I tried a crafty drag on the plane basically, and it was gurgling. And when I removed the battery from the cartomizer itself, that was full of juice, and I was able to just clean it up and put it back together, and everything was fine again. So it didn't like make a mess everywhere, which is great. But it did leak a bit, and I had topped it up just before I came out of the house, and maybe I'd topped it up a little bit more, and then the pressurised cabin on the plane obviously won't have helped. That will have helped it to force the liquid through any gap it could find in the bottom. And since I cleaned it up and put it back together, I've had it upside down in my pocket. I've had it, lying on its side in my pocket, lying on the side on the desk here, and it hasn't leaked again. So it's not concerning me. But I thought I'd mention it because if you were thinking of getting one for a plane, then maybe a cartomizer with foam in it that'll actually sort of try and hold on to the liquid. They tend to fare a bit better on planes, I've found. Tanks generally not so good. And so, as I say, it's working nicely, and although the flavour is a little bit sort of muted, I guess I've been spoiled by rebuildables and stuff over the last few months. What I am looking forward to doing now is taking it off the 650 milliamp hour battery and shoving it onto the MVP, which will be waiting ready at 4.2 volts. And I'm finding that gives me, although I get good throat hit off the 650 milliamp hour battery for a 3.2 ohm coil, it's really good throat hit, I find. But this will be better. It hit the cut-off then. I was ready for that. Now that's performing, and I like that. That's good. Might even give it a few more volts actually. See what we can get away with. Let's crank it up to 5 volts and see what that does. Yeah, that's very pleasant indeed. Right, Well, I will try and get some footage. I'm only here for a shorter stay this week, so I'm flying back tomorrow, which is Wednesday, and I'll see if I can get some footage from the train and stuff on the way back to the airport. I'll spare you the airport, it's not pretty. But until I see you in the studio, unless, like last week, I have something to add when I get back, thanks for watching.
There's still a bit of light left, so I've decided to bring the camera with me on my little sortie into Solitude. So, God knows if we'll get anything worth seeing. It is getting dark quite quickly, but we'll see.
That ended rather abruptly, didn't it? This is the problem when you do things in a rush. You know, normally you're thinking, okay, I know when the end's coming, and I basically rendered that the other day and then forgot about it. But there you go. Yeah, there's a little taster of what the old town is like, and it's very picturesque. It would be a fantastic holiday destination. There were a couple of comments there in chat as that video was showing. And I've made a couple of scribbles here. The first one was Mark Hamburg was asking which town in Switzerland it is that I've been working in, and the town is called Solothurn. That's Solothurn. and it's kind of halfway between Geneva and Basel. So it's it's a good way from Zurich as it happens. It's about an hour and a half train ride from Zurich. So it's a long journey, but it's a damn sight better journey than the one I had when I went to Munich. So I get an extra 2 hours in bed on a Monday morning and get there at the same time. So that one's easy to answer. Next thing, there were comments about tanks on planes, and I should have learned my lesson on this some time ago. When I started my contract in Munich a couple of years ago, I was using those mega tank, the Ego T things, but the big ones, yeah. So this is before there was any concept of A and B and C or anything like that. This was the original tanks, and they worked pretty well. They were, they were as good as most things that were on the market at that time. And I learned really, really quickly what pressurized cabins do to them. They just basically make them explode. So, if you are planning on sneakily stealth vaping on a plane, I think anything that's got like the polyester filler or a foam in there that will actually actively try and hang on to the juice is a good idea. With the EVOD, obviously it is a kind of tank arrangement, and if the liquid gets through that sort of central hole, then you've got a problem, and the pressurized cabin will help that happen. So yeah, generally I should have known better, really. I mean, it wasn't terrible. It just needed a little bit of a mop up, and I had to revert back to using the ellipse, which funnily enough is a tank as well, but it's very well sealed, so it didn't seem to affect that quite so much. I think probably because the atomizers are tighter fit into the tank. So that was that thing. Somebody mentioned that there's no litter, no trash anywhere on the ground in that video. It is an incredibly clean place. You might even say sterile, and you can read what you like into that. But it is, that they don't skimp on paying public service workers. There are armies of street cleaners with nothing to do because nobody would dare drop litter in the first place. And I mean, it really is that clean. You don't see nub ends, you don't see dog crap or anything around the place. The pavements are just immaculate, whatever time of day you go walking about. And there was a comment there from Dave Dawn as well. He's just saying it looked very quiet. Well, I don't know whether you recall in that little clip I showed a clock chiming. That was 8 p.m. So I'd filmed the little diary bit in the hotel room and then went for a wander to get something to eat. And I'd been there the week before, and where I was stood filming that clock, there was like a busy sort of cafe. It's like a cobbled sort of square, pedestrianised area. There was a nice thing, sort of cafe there with selling pizzas and that kind of thing. And I got there at 8 o'clock and it was packed up. Everybody gone. So I ended up getting a kebab again. Which is good because I can afford a kebab, just about. So, but yeah, that's Switzerland for you. Now, I said that I'd picked up a couple of bits and bobs during the week. They arrived. They actually arrived Thursday because I got a red card, and the missus reordered it to be delivered on Thursday for me. So, and basically what happened was, let me show you my dilemma first. If I flick to this camera. Right, this is pretty much what I'm taking with me. This is what I take with me to Switzerland in my suitcase. I take that and that in my carry-on luggage, because you always have a backup. And I've got another Ego battery in my carry-on as well, which just kind of lives there permanently. And then this stuff I put in my, I check in my suitcase. So I've got the MVP, which is fairly self-explanatory. A couple of bottles of juice, one of which is empty, and you'll see why in a minute. And then this is what I take. So I've got the other EVOD here, which I haven't touched yet. So I've got the coils for the EVOD. Got the plinth thing for the MVP. Probably doesn't need to be there. And a drip tip. And I've got a drip tip in there because I've got a couple of cartomizers. So if all else fails and everything goes wrong, I'll go back to a trusty Bosch cartomizer. And that'll be good. There's some kind of Clearo thing in there. I have no clue what that is. It might be one of the ones that came with the MVP. I'm not sure. Charging cable for the MVP and the EVOD. Swiss Army knife. Seems appropriate to take a Swiss Army knife to Switzerland. just useful things to travel with, and then a bunch of the Ego C-type atomizer heads for the ellipse. So that's what I've been taking with me now, and you know, there's enough there. You know, I only go for 3 nights or whatever it is as a rule, and I can exist quite happily on that. But using these bottles, which are the only ones I've got, were a bit of a pain actually, because filling the EVOD with one of these sort of tips, you know, it's not actually that straightforward, and it's a bit slow and time consuming, because typically you're doing this in the morning when you're late for work and all the rest of it, and it makes a mess and it's not that accurate. So my first thought was, I'll get a spiky thing, and I've got a few of those where you can pop this little plastic cap off and put on a spiky thing, because that would make it easier to fill. But then I thought, once you've got the spiky thing on, you can't put the top on. Now you don't leave your bottles of juice like that lying around in the hotel, because the cleaner isn't going to know what it is, and it could end up anywhere, and you could even end up in trouble. So I thought, no, I need a better solution. So I went looking anyway, and I ended up exchanging emails with Lisa at Cloud9, and she recommended to me these things that she's selling on the Cloud9 vaping website, and I forget what they're called now. I wrote it down. They're called Lure Lock Tip bottles, and they're really quite good actually. They hold about 20 ml, and here's one that I've transferred the contents of this bottle into this one, and it's got like a spiky top. So that, I've tried it, that I can actually refill the AGI Genesis atomizer with that. It fits in perfectly, I can fill it. And what you do when you're finished with it and you just want to chuck it back in your suitcase in a hurry, is you just twist the top half a turn and it comes off, and then you get these little orange caps and it twists on, and that is really tight. I've tried to make it leak and I just cannot make it leak. That'll be fine in the hold in my suitcase. So they're really good. They're not cheap. I think the bottles were £2 a piece, maybe something like that. What did I do? I've got the invoice here actually. I can tell you exactly. Yeah, the bottles were £2 a piece, and if you're thinking of getting any, you have to buy the little orange sort of sealing caps separately. So, you know, because you might not need them. You can. The green nozzle comes with the bottle. That's what you get. But if you want to seal it, then you've got to buy these separately. Now, if you do go for those, read it properly, because I didn't. And I thought I'd ordered 3 of these caps, and what I actually ordered was 3 bags. So I've got plenty of spares of these. But I think that's, like I say, I mean, it's not the cheapest plastic bottle you're going to get, but it's made of that soft, squishy sort of stuff. A little bit sort of easier to squeeze, and it's perfect for refilling stuff where you need a nozzle. It's basically a syringe replacement. So I think that's going to make life a little bit easier, to be honest. Right, so yeah, that's basically Switzerland done for this week. So let's move along. I think the next thing I've got to do is play you some ads, and then I'm going to take a look at this topic that I wrote down as, are things looking up? Is the tide turning? See you after this.
Cloud9 Vaping, sponsors of Dave's Tackle Box.
and welcome back. Right, so this week when I came back from Switzerland, I managed to get so I could fly back on Wednesday night, but basically I pulled a fast one with my project managers. I'm not going to get away with that very, very many times, but I flew back on Wednesday night and worked from home on Thursday and Friday, and I got back in time to watch VT Talk, and I kind of like it's quite difficult to keep up with things like the developments with the EU and the whole TPD stuff when you're travelling around. So it was actually really useful. He streamed the latest Envy committee meeting, which took place during Wednesday daytime for the couple of hours leading up to the VT Talk show, and that was really useful. And then with Jerry Stimpson, then they analysed what went on during that, and if you saw any of that, it was really upbeat. If you didn't see any of that, what we heard was a couple of things. For a start, Linda McAvan, her tone appears to have softened. They've arranged a workshop including representatives of the vaping community, so vapers, or so they reckon, for the 7th of May. And the language seemed to have changed a bit. It was no longer a case of how do we get these banned. It was a case of we're going to hear and make sure we do the right thing. It could be political manoeuvring, but hey, it's a damn sight better to listen to and then easier to listen to than what we've been getting so far. It was great. Now, one of the things that really stood out for me during that Envy session was a speech by a guy called Chris Davies. You'll remember Chris Davies. He's the guy from the Northwest. He's a Liberal Democrat, I think. Let's make sure I get it exactly right. Yeah, he's a Lib Dem. MEP for the Northwest region. So I'm just looking over my shoulder. It says he's representing Cheshire, Cumbria, Greater Manchester, Lancashire and Merseyside. Okay, and he really sort of gave me some hope that people are listening. This is the guy who wrote to the local paper asking people who used electronic cigarettes to contact him and explain them to him. I sent a letter. I know a lot of people who viewed this sent him a letter. We sent him tweets. He listened, and the little speech that he made in the Envy committee was just so refreshing to hear. Okay, we knew that people like Martin Callanan and a couple of others were going to basically speak in our favour, but this guy made it his business to find out what's going on. He asked people what they thought. He listened to what they said. And he played an absolute blinder in the chamber there in Brussels, and I thank him for it. I'm just going to switch to his website. This is his website, and he's got a page entitled E-Cigarette Consultation Response, where he explains what he did. He asked people for he actually says he wrote to 50 newspapers in his Northwest England constituency asking for people's views on e-cigarettes, and he's basically taken excerpts from many of the replies and listed them on here. It's just brilliant. You can tell that he gets it, that he's understood what's going on. Look at the headings he's picked. He's picked a heading of harm reduction, you know. Just pick out a couple of random quotes. I'm the first to admit I'm still addicted to nicotine and the idea of smoking, but with the e-cigarette I'm slowly lowering my levels of nicotine intake and hope in the long run to be free of the substance through my own careful controlling of it. That's perhaps not a typical response and not what we would have said, but it's a valid point. It's just brilliant. His next heading is the medical versus consumer product. He's saying he doesn't believe it should be regulated as a medical product. It should be a consumer product. He talks about flavourings and how important they are, and the information that he's received from his constituents, and a few more besides, I think. He points out that people don't believe that they're attractive to non-smokers. They're not going to be a gateway for people to start using nicotine, and various other random comments. So it's just so refreshing to see. Even Glenys Wilmot, remember Glenys, my local MEP? Bless her. She was the one saying they're no more regulated than the pen in my hand. And it's crazy. I think. Well, I don't think I'm misquoting her. I think the exact words she was. It's crazy that they're not regulated like other nicotine-containing products, like patches and stuff like that. It's crazy that they're not regulated as medicines. It's such a harmful drug, an addictive drug. And not only did she soften her tone and said that she's going to listen to what goes on in this workshop, and remember, Glenys is very influential. She's the Labour leader in the EU. Yeah, she's the British Labour Party leader. So any Labour MPs who were unsure what they were going to do were going to take the lead from people like Glenys, and even she'd softened her tone. I'm just going to put this on screen. There we go. This is this week's letter from Glenys, because I wrote to her a fair bit. My last letter to her was complaining that she hadn't answered any of my points and just given me a patronising stock reply. But this week she says to me, "Dear Dave, thank you for your further email regarding e-cigarettes. I do appreciate how strongly you feel about this issue, and I will continue to examine any new evidence produced. I will be attending a hearing on the issue of e-cigarettes in the European Parliament on the 7th of May, when no doubt there will be further evidence from all sides of the argument. With thanks for writing." Now, she's actually annoyed me a bit with that, because she's kind of taken the wind out of my sails a bit. I've got nothing, there's not much I can attack in that letter to get back to her. So I'm going to have to be more creative with my next letter to her, because she's not off the hook yet as far as I'm concerned. So we've got MEPs reaching the conclusion that these shouldn't be regulated as medical products. We've got people like Linda McCavan and Glenys softening their tone, not U-turning, not changing their minds, but perhaps just hinting that they're open to hearing a little bit more and understanding the response. And to hear Linda McCavan commenting about the number of tweets she got, I wonder who sent them, eh? But there was something else that was sent to me. Now, I'm going to start with an apology in case I get this wrong. I was actually given this little bit of footage, this little bit of audio, which come from Radio West Midlands by Dave Dawn, and I think he was put onto it, I think by Ian C, who is a Vapor Trails TV viewer. It's worth it. It's about 7 minutes long, and I think it's worth it because I think, we've got the politicians starting to maybe see our point of view. We've been very critical of a lot of the coverage that e-cigarettes have had in the media over the last few months, and this is an example. This to me is what we should be getting. Have a listen to this. Kick back, have a beer, listen to this.
Should fake cigarettes, or electronic cigarettes as they call them, be banned in all public places? More and more businesses seem to be outlawing them because staff get confused about whether people are actually smoking or not. The electronic cigarettes, they look very similar to regular ones. They light up at the end, they contain nicotine, but no harmful tar or chemicals. One of the businesses which has banned e-cigarettes is the pub chain Wetherspoons. Eddie Gershon is the spokesman.
It's not a case of not liking them, but we ban them purely because they look like real cigarettes, which is obviously part of the attraction. In a busy pub, it's very difficult for managers and staff to actually see whether it's a real cigarette or one of these e-cigarettes. We don't want to be in a position where our staff are forever coming from behind the bar to police the situation. There have been times where we've actually gone up and people have been using real cigarettes but trying to pass them off as one of these e-cigarettes.
That's Eddie Gershon from Wetherspoons. Damien Scott is the UK commercial director of SkyCig, which makes electronic cigarettes. He says there is no health risks at all to using them.
The nicotine has been delivered to the bloodstream safely and effectively, but there is no tar or chemicals contained in the cigarette. There is no burning. We've actually conducted a blood study with the University of East London, which proves that the nicotine is being delivered to the bloodstream safely and effectively and at suitable levels.
That's Damien Scott. Let's go and talk to Paul Hooper, who's part of the West Midlands Tobacco Control Network, and also with us Simon Clark, director of the smokers lobby group Forest. Gentlemen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Paul, first of all, for people who aren't aware, can we just explain what an electronic cigarette is and what's in it?
Yeah, I mean, it's an electronic nicotine delivery system, basically, which means that what you've got inside very often is nicotine contained in propylene glycol or glycerine, It's often in the form of a liquid, and that liquid is then heated by the electronic element. It produces a vapor. So the vapor contains nicotine, it contains this glycol as well. You breathe it in and it delivers nicotine to the body. Now, it is quite true what people have said, that it doesn't contain the tar or other chemicals. It's not true to say that there's no health risks at all, because nicotine itself is not without harm, but it certainly wouldn't be as harmful as shall we say, a normal cigarette.
So no tar, but there is nicotine, so it will do you some harm. It looks like a cigarette, it tastes like a cigarette, but it isn't a cigarette.
Not all of them. I mean, it's trying to mimic a cigarette, and they can be marketed as alternatives to cigarettes. What they can't be marketed for at the moment, until the Medicines and Healthcare Regulatory Authority determine this, is as ways of quitting smoking. The sort of aids that are out there at the moment, like nicotine gum patches, other medicines, have gone through extensive research and trials to prove their effectiveness for helping people to quit. If you make a medicinal claim, then you've got to be able to back it up, and the e-cigarettes, generally speaking, don't have that backup at the moment. That's not to say that people can't quit as a result of using them, but they can't claim that as part of their advertising. The other important factor is, because the nicotine is not in a leaf form, as it is in tobacco and the cigarettes, it's in a liquid form. It does have to be supplied in a child-proof container, because if you swallow the liquid, it could be quite harmful.
Yeah, Simon, stay with us, Paul. Simon Clark here as well. He's director of the smokers' lobby group Forest. I mean, the makers are saying the e-cigarettes are no more dangerous to health than nicotine patches or gum, but Wetherspoons have banned them. So how do you feel about that, Simon?
Well, I just think it's ridiculous to ban them. I mean, we support them because they do offer the consumer choice, and that's what we're all about. We've always said that people should be allowed to choose whether or not they wish to smoke tobacco, and it seems to us that electronic cigarettes are something that should be welcomed by a large number of people. I mean, Paul's talked there about possible health risks, but I think everybody agrees that if there are health risks associated with electronic cigarettes, nobody really knows at the moment because they're still such a new product. But we should surely welcome something like this, which can be promoted as a harm reduction product. What we find from our supporters is there are some people who are looking to quit or maybe cut down. They see electronic cigarettes as a good way of doing that. I'm looking at the moment at a press release came in this afternoon from the British Psychological Society, and the headline is, "E-cigarettes could help smokers stub it out for good." So clearly there are useful products in terms of harm reduction, but also a lot of our supporters, this is the majority group, they find them a very useful dual-purpose product in the sense that these are millions of people out there don't want to give up, but of course they can't smoke in the workplace, they can't smoke on public transport or in pubs, and e-cigarettes are actually a very useful alternative, and I think they should be welcomed. And for Wetherspoons to be banning them just seems utterly ridiculous. I think e-cigarettes are the future, and they should be welcomed.
Well, some airlines have banned them as well, and people might remember last July there was a major terrorist alert which was sparked on the M6. A man's e-cigarette started emitting vapour, and the coach was stopped, and everybody had to get off while the police investigated, because it will emit a vapour, and they are quite lifelike. It's difficult, if you're a member of staff, it's difficult to tell, Paul, whether people are smoking or not, isn't it?
Well, not in all cases, because many of the e-cigarette manufacturers have recognised the fact they don't actually want to be mimicking cigarettes as such, other than in the delivery mechanism. And so they come in different colours. They have a blue light on the end or a green light on the end instead of a red one, so they can't be mistaken for cigarettes. And Simon is absolutely right that there is this risk of it being mistaken for people smoking and causing confusion and so on. But as a general rule, they can be used indoors. They don't have the same effects as second-hand smoke, and generally speaking, they are a harm reduction mechanism. People can sit at the desk and use them and not affect anyone else at all, which I think is obviously a positive thing. From the point of view of whether they should be licensed for use for quitting, that's a slightly different issue, but we do recognise that people do want to stop smoking, and if this helps people to stop smoking, that generally speaking is a good thing.
How much do they cost, by the way?
They've come down in price considerably. It does vary from manufacturer to manufacturer. And early on, these have been around for a few years now. Early on, the quality control of some of the products was less than desirable, and people found that they were getting different doses even within the same packet of products. But it seems to have stabilised a little bit. It certainly can be cheaper than buying cigarettes.
Paul Hooper and Simon Clark with us. E-cigarettes, if you tried one, if you used one, if you got one, how effective are they? Should they be banned? Because most people seem to be saying that they're not that harmful in terms of second-hand smoking, so you're not going to suffer. Or would you rather have people, even with an e-cigarette, going outside?
BBC.
And there you go. So, I mean, that kind of makes a refreshing change, doesn't it? I mean, it seems like that it's not that long ago that we were like raising complaints to the Press Complaints Commission, complaining to the BBC about the biased coverage that they were giving. Everything was very anti. Living in the West Midlands region, and I listened to Paul Franks there quite a lot on the way back from football matches. You know, when you're sitting in the traffic getting away from Villa Park, you put that on for the football phoning, and he's a good guy. You know, he's a well-respected guy, and I felt a little bit sorry for him there. Because let's face it, he lined up a sort of e-cig advocate. He lined up somebody from West Midlands Tobacco Control Network, whoever the hell they are. But let's face it, they're supposed to be anti, aren't they? He got somebody from Forest, and even the guy from Wetherspoons said, no, it isn't that we don't like them. It's just they cause us a problem. You know, he couldn't get an argument going. So the whole thing reflected, I thought, very positively on our cause. There's more as well. There's more. This is a letter from the House of Lords to Anna Soubry, who is the Parliamentary Under Secretary of State for Public Health, so the Health Minister for all intents and purposes. And even in here, we've got stuff. I was going to go through this in more detail, but I'm running a bit behind, so I'm just going to sort of highlight this little bit here. It says, on the subject of NCPs, it's broadly supportive of the Tobacco Products Directive. They're saying yes, it needs updated because, you know, before the British government can support it, they go through this process, this parliamentary subcommittee through the Lords, and we actually screened a bit of it on Vapor Trails TV back in January when Anna Soubry did a presentation to the Lords Committee, and you might remember. The overwhelming sense that you got that Anna Soubry hadn't got a freaking clue what an e-cigarette was. She was embarrassingly naive. But the Lords, bless them, bless their cotton socks, they seem to have actually dug into this and given it some thought. Look, it says, we believe that some regulation of NCPs is necessary, but recommend that consideration should be given to doing so outside the scope of this draft directive. The regulation of NCPs should be based on the results of scientific research into the physiological effects of nicotine, while also considering the possible health benefits of the alternative that NCPs offer to smokers. The Lords want it out of the TPD. That pretty much rounds off my is the tide turning, are things looking up little sort of feature, because it's great. I mean, I'm sure if I dug I'd find some negative crap as well, but let's be honest, that's a lot of positive news in 1 week. And this leads me into my next little point. This is down to, in no small part, our Twitter bomb campaigns, us contacting our MEPs. If anybody's got any doubt about whether contacting their MEP can have an effect, look at the Chris Davies thing. Look at the Glenys Wilmot thing. I've been arguing with that woman since I found out who she was. You know, since she did her thing in January, sort of, you know, they're no more regulated than this pen in my hand, and it's crazy they're not regulated as medicines and all that. Even she softened her tone. So do not underestimate the power that we've got. It could be some political manoeuvring, you know. We can't get complacent. We do not want to get complacent. So it's important. I saw Andy was doing the vapor mail feature on his show last night. What a brilliant idea. Let's keep the pressure on them. It's going to work. Another thing that Andy Sutton's been doing, of course, is the Smoke Without Fire campaign. Now, I kid you not, setting everything up for the show takes a little while. So what I tend to do on a Sunday night is about 6 o'clock. I switch on computers, I load up web pages like that Chris Davies thing that I'm going to use, and get them all set up and everything. And then I'll go and get me dinner and come back and do the show. And at 6 o'clock, I loaded up the Kickstarter page for Smoke Without Fire, the documentary project that Andy's heading up, and we'd reached a total of about 5,700 something pounds, just shy of £6,000 it was. And I was going to be sort of banging the table here saying, come on guys, you know, we're more than halfway there, we've got a month left to go, let's get over the line, let's get as much money in as we can. And then I came back up at about 8 o'clock to start getting everything ready to transmit, and this is what I found. Let's get the right camera up. I think you can see that quite clearly. We've only gone and done it. £10,796. Do you know what? If I refresh that, it might even have gone up. I don't know. It's a while since I did it. No, I'm just getting greedy now, aren't I? £10,796. We did it. We did it in just over a week. We made the 10 grand. This means that Andy can now start doing things. I just had a chance to touch base with him very briefly, because I went to him and I said, what's the message now? We've got there. And Andy's really excited and a little bit shocked. Bless him. He can now go and start booking camera crews and things like that. You know, we're on our way. But we can go further. So I believe the term that Andy used was something like a stretch fund or something. Andy said all along that if we exceed the total, we can do more. So he's going to be working on that in the next few days, I would imagine. We've met that target. Let's set ourselves a new one. Let's see how big we can make this. But to everybody that's donated and anybody that's going to donate, I know Gary Dibley's doing an auction, and there's going to be more money coming in for sure. You know, to everybody that is thinking about or is going to donate to the Smoke Without Fire campaign, well done. You pulled it off. How cool is that? It's really quite exciting, isn't it? Better take an ad break.
Cloud9 Vaping, sponsors of Dave's Tackle Box.
iVapor and iVapor Elixir, based in Yorkshire, for your e-cig needs. That's ivapor.co.uk and ivapor-elixir.co.uk. iVapor and ivapor-elixir.co.uk, proud sponsors of vaportrails.tv.
Cloud9 Vaping, sponsors of Dave's Tackle Box.
And welcome back, and let's just look at that one more time. £10,796. And there's still 27 days to go. It's just brilliant. That's made my weekend, that has. It really has. Right, But let's look at some more e-cig gear, because I'm running desperately late here. There's no more VT though, so I can just talk fast. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a close-up cam again. There we go. This is my eVic. There are many like it, but this one is mine, etc, etc. I'll just show that off first. Whilst I was shopping for those little bottles at Cloud9, I kind of sort of thought, well, let's fill up the shopping basket a bit. So I bought myself a Super T T-Trip. A T-tip, should I say. It's a whistle tip shaped one, but it's for dripping, because they hadn't got the one that isn't for dripping. But I thought I'm having it anyway, because I do like the Super T drip tips. So that was to celebrate my new job. So and I've put it here on this AGI, which I'm loving, and it's on my eVic. Now that doesn't particularly look great, the way that's all shaped and stuff like that. So I've been looking at getting a new set of clothes for this eVic for a while. Now, one thing I do want to point out actually, just before I remove that, is you can see that it does actually meet quite well between this collar here and the AGI. So I went and ordered myself a Siam Mods tube, top cap and bottom cap. Now the reason I wanted to change it so badly, and I saw Dave talking about this, he's mentioned it a couple of times on the Haze Hour quite recently. This thing's supposed to be steel, but it's so light it's hard to believe. And whilst that's not a problem, you know, it's got enough weight in it when it's got a battery, it's okay. But if you put a stainless steel atomizer like my Fagatti or this thing on the top, it's very top heavy, and it only takes the slightest knock if you stood it on the desk and bang, it's over. It just feels too lightweight. So I actually sort of had a look around, and most places were out of stock, but it was vapers, that's spelled vaperus .ie, so it must be an Irish company. I found it on a couple of weeks ago, and I ordered myself a Siam Mods, as I say, top cap, bottom cap and tube. So it comes as a set, and I went for the plain one. You can get patterned ones, and I thought, brilliant, let's put that on. The difference between the weight of this and this, I mean, this is more than twice as heavy, I'd say. I should have grabbed a little set of scales, shouldn't I? But using this tube, it feels so much more hefty and substantial, and it's a lot less prone to getting knocked over. And wait for it, if I can get the cap on. I've never had that much trouble getting the cap on before. The threads are good. There's a smiley face on the bottom. It's worth it just for that, isn't it? That feels now a lot more solid, a lot more substantial. The top cap tapers down to sort of 22 mil with a lot less. It's not kind of rounded like that one. I think it looks better all round, to be honest. Instead of the little slits on the top for airflow, it's got holes here as well. So you'd hope that therefore you could screw your atomizer all the way down. But look, there's a gap, and he's really annoying me. There's no gap with this one, but with this one there's a gap. And it's bugging me something rotten. I mean, I know it's not that big a deal. Most people would say that I'm just being obsessive, but it's driving me nuts. So I think what I'm probably going to do is take a bit off the 510 connector inside there. I've got to see whether this will screw down far enough, and maybe I'll do something. With the Fagatti, I can adjust the bottom and it just about closes that gap. But with this, and with a few other things I've tried on it actually, there's a gap, and it's annoying me. But I have to say, I'm still using it with this. I only put it back together on that just to show you guys the before and after. It totally transforms the eVic. It makes it feel much more solid than it was, and it's much more likely to stay upright now. It actually needs a bit of a shove to knock it over, whereas before just the slightest tap and bang. So it's a good thing, I think. My Evic's playing up as well. It's lost the date and time. But it remembers the wattage and everything. That's the main thing. So, yeah. Pleased with that. Can't remember what it cost me, else I'd tell you, because I bought it a couple of weeks ago and I've been to sleep since then. But it was Vape RUS, Vape RUS. Funny enough, coincidentally, I think I've just started advertising with us, but I didn't know that when I bought it. So welcome aboard, guys. Another thing that I bought, well, and I got this from Cloud9. Hang on, get back to this camera, if it will. Back to camera 2. Do it. Oh, it's lost the network. Stand by, everyone. Stand by while I get my iPad to find the network again. Waiting for the little green lights, and we can go to camera 2. Right, another thing I bought is this. And this is a Provari ring. Now there's a few people making these. And I got this one from Cloud9. It's made by Svomesto, you know, the people that make the Kaifen or Kaifen, however you pronounce it. And it solves a little problem. Here is a Provari with an atomizer on the top. And look, it's just not neat. Some people like this teardrop design. I think it's rubbish. It's just such a silly shape. Why didn't they just make it square? I don't know. But with this thing, this Provari ring, I can just drop that on the top like that. And you can see where I'm going with it. I screw my atomizer on like so. And it looks more joined up. And it also hides that naff teardrop pattern. So I think I'm going to see if I can get a cap for the bottom of it. I mean, I probably won't use it much anyway, because I never use this Provari. Because anything like a low resistance atomizer, and that's what you get. So it doesn't actually work with most of my preferred configurations of atomizer. So yeah, I thought I'd share that with you. Some of the shopping that I've done this week. So I've got my bottles, and it's good, isn't it? So we must be getting close to time, and I've just realised I've got the wrong Skype window open. So I'm not sure how long we've got left, but it can't be long. But so I'm going to just sort of wrap up, I guess. That was a hint, Chris, to how long have we got left. She's typing. 1 minute 45 seconds. Superb. Okay. Right. So I think I've got in everything I wanted tonight. I've mentioned everything. Yeah, so I was going to talk about some cartos, but we'll do that another time. Just reflecting on the week then, like I say, mental busy because of the travel and everything, but to fly back in on Wednesday to all of this apparent good news. I don't know, I mean, I guess a lot of you guys, like me, since this whole idea of the TPD was, we were all caught out in December. And, you know, I've invested a lot of time and emotional energy into this whole thing, and particularly with me not being working from sort of January, February and March, I was starting to get a little bit weary at times and wondering whether we were flogging a dead horse and everything. So to see this slight change of attitude, at least from some of the key players, it's made me enthusiastic again. It's given me a little boost, and I know I'm banging on about it, but you know, it's down to you guys. You know, it was your letters to your MEPs and your MPs, and the MPs are important. You've got to keep the pressure on now, and let's drive this home. But anyway, I better go because I'm rabbiting now, and I'm gonna get up early and get on the plane, and I'm back on Thursday night, and I'll put another show together, and I'll see you next Sunday. Until then, thanks for watching. Good night.
sponsors of Dave's Tackle Box.